And gentlemen,
Sorry, recording.
okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Thatcham Town Council of Monday, the 5th of February, 2024. We just have three items on the agenda this evening and we are a little time constrained, so I hope we will be able to gallop through the agenda at a reasonable pace. The meeting is being recorded for publication on the Thatcham Town Council YouTube channel. John, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we have one apology. Councillor Suzanne Mantos.
Thank you.
I think we have Councillor. I recall that Councillor Cottam also sent his apologies via the Councillors WhatsApp group.
That's right, and Councillor Brooks as well. And Councillor Stevenson said she'd be a little late.
Just arrived. 30 seconds.
Not so as you'd notice. Okay, super. And Councillor Hart. Yeah, did we say anything? Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest?
I have a significant declaration of interest, Mr. Mayor, with me being chair of Thatcham Town Cricket Club, and one of the reasons being here this evening is the item number 3, Thatcham Town Cricket Club lease.
Okay, thank you very much. Noted. Do we have any others?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm the representative of this town council on Thatcham Cricket Club.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Boyd. Any others? No. Okay. So we'll move straight on then to item 3 regarding the Thatcham Town Cricket Club lease, and to receive and consider a report from the town clerk regarding a request from Sport England for the cricket club to seek an extension of its lease with the town council for use of Brownfield, arising from Sport England's consultee response to the planning application to construct flood alleviation works at the northern end of the site. You'll have seen the town clerk's report there. The issues really for us this evening are to consider whether the council is willing to extend the lease on the basis to be discussed, and whether they're willing to amend the notice period required in the termination clause of the current lease. To bear in mind, as time is of the essence, of course, that there's the interim stage of providing a letter of intent, which would indeed, I believe, satisfy Sport England. Councillor Jeffrey.
Mr. Mayor, this is, as I think you mentioned, the final element in the entire scheme, the swamp scheme, which dates back to the 2007 floods, that many of us remember very well indeed in Thatcham. The particular bit that we're here now with, this last item, is one which is incredibly complex from a legal point of view because of the various ownerships of land and the various things that will happen in conducting this piece of work, producing the swale running down to the flood retention pond, and the fact that that will have a major impact on the memorial field, which is a problem for the memorial field, but it will have a major impact on the Thatcham Town Cricket Club leased land, which land is leased from this council. The reason that I put my hand up with the hope of speaking first is not to grandstand the council into taking any particular position, but to make sure that everybody understands the issues that we're looking at. I am hoping that we can do something relatively simple that will be acceptable to all parties. Firstly, it's extremely important that we get it done this year because words have been said to me just after I came into this chamber, which sum it up very well indeed. We have got floods all around us at the moment. Next year, any government, whatever government it may be, will have a lot of questions about flooding hitting it. This year, we're actually there in the scheme of things. We're within the purview of the Department of the Environment and their flood prevention and attenuation schemes. If we get it done this year, if we get everything inside the box this year, I think that we're probably home and dry, or puns genuinely unintended, whereas next year it might not be quite so straightforward. The reason that we're here today with a special meeting of council is because of the timescales of fitting everything together. The bit that we want to fit together is to make sure that the town council, which owns the land which the cricket club lease, can come to an agreement that ticks the various boxes. Sport England, particularly, who want a long-term lease. To my astonishment, I had actually forgotten until officers went and, indeed, it was not the officers, was it? It was a member of this council who dug out and actually bothered to read the lease and realised that what we've got at the moment is a lease with a 3-year break clause on either side. Yeah. That's of no use to anybody. It's literally of no use to anybody. It's pointless. Sport England are asking this council to be prepared to give up that piece of land to Thatcham Town Cricket Club for a 50-year period. That makes me feel very uncomfortable because I think that 50 years is, well, A, it's a very long time. It's certainly going to see me out. I think you'll see quite a few members of this council out. And I think that 50 years for a piece of land which was in effect semi-gifted to this council by the then owner of the land, the then owner of the land sold what is now his farm, is now the Whitelands estate. That was sold at commercial value, property development value, made him a great deal of money. Mr. Brown sold this council that land at agricultural prices, which are considerably lower than development prices. And he did it because it was a way of making sure that the town got the benefit of a real asset. That real asset, whilst it's been in the hands of the cricket club, has been looked after, I would suggest, very well indeed. And I think it is an asset to the town. I think that a 50-year lease is way over where we need to be. Sport England are asking us for a 50-year lease. The solution, I hope, that would be acceptable to Sport England, to the cricket club, and to this council, is that we agree a 50-year lease, but with a 25-year break point. So either side can break the lease at 25 years without any other issue arising. That gives us a great deal of control at a point where it may matter, but it means that we would be announcing that we are prepared to sign a lease, which is for the 50 years that I understand Sport England wish to see. So broadly speaking, I think you've got where I'm at, and where I'm at does not necessarily mean that everybody else on the council is at the same point, though I think that people involved will need to just remind whether or not they have a declaration of interest to make when they speak on the subject. But there we are. That's my kick-off point, Mr. Mayor, and I hope that helps us.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. That sets it out very nicely, I think. Councillor Cottingham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so once again, I'll declare the fact that I am chair of Thatcham Town Cricket Club. So under the direction of Councillor Jeffrey before Christmas, I actually organised a meeting with aforementioned Sport England, along with the applicant West Berkshire Council as well, regarding matters for the flood alleviation scheme, of what the impact was going to be on Brownsfield. And it did come out a little bit out of the blue. Bob Sharples from Sport England announcing the fact that they required a 50-year lease. That is, I think, to do with their own constitution, the fact that giving up sporting land as that sort of compensation of once that land is gone, it's gone for good. Those of you who probably come here on Friday night see that top area being used by youngsters. There is a 2-lane net, an artificial wicket, also an under-9 wicket as well, and it will have an impact on our junior nights on a Friday night. So I also had a conversation earlier today with legal advice who helped us out with the lease for the cricket club. So an ex-member, chap called Andrew Mills, who's part of a legal firm in Newbury. His advice is, from a next steps perspective, is to have a lease heads of terms. A lease heads of terms is just specifying what the duration of the new lease will be, plus the break clause, plus making sure we have the district valuer coming in to put the rent at the correct rate once that land has been reassessed or been lost as such. So this document, in essence, gives the intention of both parties that the lease will be renegotiated. He's advising that what would happen next after that would that the lease would be surrendered between both parties, and we would go into formal negotiation. So having a document which puts together whatever we decide here. I spoke to Bob also by phone. He said that once that, if there's an agreement with that, with initially was put forward with regarding the lease heads of terms, that will be sufficient for Sport England to withdraw their objection to the flood alleviation scheme. So it's just really making sure that, as I say, I think we've got a solution, a win-win. It's whether or not councillors in this room are happy enough with Councillor Jeffrey's proposal over 50 years and 25-year break clause.
Thank you. Councillor Plank?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm quite satisfied with the proposal and with the suggestion from Councillor Jeffrey. I just got a couple of extra suggestions to make. 50 years is an extremely long time, and it's very unlikely that Sport England will be around in 50 years' time, and their ability to object to a loss of playing facilities. Similarly, it's a very long time for a club which is, legally speaking, I believe, an unincorporated association. Therefore, I would suggest that there should be part of the heads of terms should be a condition that the site continues to be effectively used for cricket and associated activities. And if that ceases to be the case, then the lease would be capable of being terminated more quickly. And I'm sure that all of the parties would, in that circumstance, be happy. Well, would be acceptable for that to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I've got Councillor Boyd, then Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. On a slightly different tact, what we're hearing here is, terms about leases, etc., but we're not really getting the full impact of what's going to happen to Thatcham Cricket Club. This proposed alleviation scheme is the one that really is impacting our community. All the schemes before that have been dotted around the town. And I know, I was here, Thatcham was very proactive following the floods. We formed the Thatcham Flood Forum. We hired in technical help to get our plan put together, and were commended for that from, was it Mr. Pick? Produced the report from the government. So, we have been very proactive in our flood alleviation schemes, but the impact on Thatcham Cricket Club, which is the 14th oldest club to be registered in England, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere in the next 50 years. The impact it's going to have is considerable. When we talk about losing the nets and the playing field up at the top end of it, where they've got artificial surfaces, those artificial surfaces will have to be brought down and put onto Thatcham Square, into the main square, which unfortunately means the impact for Thatcham as a county ground means they will no longer have county status because of having the artificial surface on there. You know, any ball that hits that from one of the other players, you know, it's going to go off at different angles, etc. So, you know, that alone, not being able to continue with county cricket. As Councillor Cottingham mentioned, you know, the youth players that come and practice up there on Fridays, it's not just them coming and practicing on Fridays, the families come along. You know, there's a great night out there, they have barbecues out there. It's more of a social gathering as well. And the real fear for the club is that these youngsters will no longer be coming to Thatcham because they're not going to have the training facilities that they've had before. The cricket square itself with the artificial surfaces on there is now going to get used a lot more because you're going to have training on there as well. So it's really impacting on the cricket club. And I don't think that, you know, many people are particularly aware of that. We are just here tonight talking about leases, etc. But it's really the impact on the community, which is part of Thatcham Cricket Club. And at the moment, it's an application. And I know everybody is thinking, well, yes, it's going to go through, but what if it doesn't? I mean, even condemned men have a reprieve at the end of the day, and perhaps Thatcham Cricket Club will get a reprieve at the end of the day and will be able to keep their facilities intact. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes. Don't know how to follow that, Chair, because I do tend to agree with Councillor Boyd, but I want to go back to a point that we have on our agenda, which is 5 para 1, where it says 50 years requested by Sport England, presumed to be 50 years from the date of the renegotiated lease, and not an additional 50 years. I would like to know what precisely am I agreeing to here, what dates it dates from? Is this till 2074? Will someone please clarify?
Councillor Cottingham, can you clarify that?
Yes, so thank you, Mayor. To clarification, this will be all wrapped up within the renegotiation of the lease for the entirety of the land. So the actual playing surface area is being reduced significantly. So that top end is going to go. The field is going to be transferred presumably to West Berkshire Council to look after. So part of the lease rental, which was negotiated, 31-year lease, which was roughly 14 years ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer.
2010.
2010, yes, 2010, 14 years ago, was based upon the district valuer for the entire site. But in reality, you're going to get, I don't know how many, well, how much space has been lost. We'll know once the flood alleviation scheme has been completed regarding the swale and where the fence goes. So hence just waiting until the scheme has been completed before the lease is renegotiated. So this part of context is that we've been trying to register the lease retrospectively with the land registry, and they've told us it takes 18 months to register. So there's a huge backlog in the land registry office for this type of registering leases. So yeah, from our perspective, from the Thatcham Town Cricket Club's perspective, it would be a new lease starting once, because the key to it is going to be the value of the rent chargeable, and which is then all wrapped up in the compensation which Thatcham Town Council will then receive from the agent, because obviously they've lost land, which then has a loss of income for Thatcham Town Council over the lifetime of the new lease.
Thank you.
If that all makes sense.
So, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Mayor. I think to set some of this, I was always setting these things in context. The purpose of getting this through tonight is that then we can go back, or we can allow Thatcham Cricket Club to go back to Sport England and say that yes, the council is prepared to grant a 50-year lease, but specifically with a 25-year break clause. There is nothing, Councillor Boyd, that we can do about the fact that the Swamp scheme, the one which has been designed by Stuart and the late Stuart and the engineers, that's what the scheme is. The scheme is, it's the swale running down the north end of what is currently the cricket ground, going into the north end of the Memorial Field. That's what the scheme is, and we're not being asked whether we like it or dislike it, because the Department of the Environment, my comprehension is, are able to go ahead and just do it, because that is a part of the flood defences for Thatcham, if there were to be a repeat of the 2007 floods. I'm hoping that's a helpful comment. The point is that if we can agree that we will be prepared to offer a 50-year lease, but with a 25-year break, then we think that we have satisfied, but try and find the right words, satisfied the concern of Sport England, who then will be prepared to lift the objection, the statutory objection they've currently put in. If they lift it, then we're able to go ahead this year with getting this particular scheme done. It is the last part of the Thatcham flood defences schemes that were designed by Stuart all those years ago, back in 2007. So I am hoping that's a helpful comment and not just reiterating what's already been said.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just before I bring you in, Mr. Woodham, did you want to make any comments? You suggested you may have something to say, but I don't want to put words in your mouth if you don't. If you do, then I think I need to get you.
Propose that we suspend standing orders.
You have a second there. Those in favour.
Propose that we invite members of the public to speak.
Those were my words.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors for a short bit of time. To be quite honest with you, I've been listening, as you might think, intently. I also latch on to really the three points. We are at a critical start again. This is absolutely a critical scheme to complete the whole thing. I don't want to give you a long lecture on all the schemes, but everything we've done up to now, I absolutely agree with the comment that it hasn't interfered much with the community. Although I would say, do not forget the South East Thatcham scheme, and it went through the playing fields of the Kennett School and also at Dunstan Green and the bunds that were put in there. And all of these aspects come together, because it's one thing trying to capture as much water as we can coming off the hillsides to the north and east and west, which are now just about complete. It's another thing to capture any other subsidiary water that's coming off the built up land. And if you remember when the Whitelands estate, I wasn't even here then, but when that was built, of course there were no such things as suds for development, right? So the way to look at this scheme, if you step right back from it and say, look, actually what this is doing is putting a jolly big sud scheme in, capture the runoff from the estates that were built to the north, when frankly most people didn't realise that there was too much risk coming from the hillsides. So think of it as a large sud scheme that is in a perfect position because of these the sewer that runs through to get the water safely down to the river rather than over the roads, down Green Lane and into the Lord's estate. We were very lucky 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yes, it was lovely that north of the river, Thatcham stayed dry compared to other things around West Berkshire. I know it was a different form of flooding, but ultimately floods come from runoff from at various points. So it is a critical scheme. There is nowhere else it can be put, right? It can't be redesigned out. Secondly, the point that was made, I think, again, by Councillor Jeffrey and others, was this is the critical moment. We're already actually running about a month late in terms of getting this through Eastern area planning. And the critical point is site clearance. And there's not a lot of it, but it has to be done. And already we're right on the edge of whether or not the site clearance work could be done as we run into the bird nesting season. Without the site clearance being done, the scheme can't be started. The scheme can't be started, it's not done this, you only do it in the summer, and the spring and the autumn, so it won't happen this year. Which leads us to the last point that says there is a lot of uncertainty about the future and availability of funds. Right now, West Berkshire Council have the approvals and the funds from the EA and other bodies like the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee. I can't tell you, I don't want to paint a big scare story, but I can't tell you that will be available in the future if we go back where there's a lot of other competing flood schemes by next year as a result of what's just happened and over the last 2 years. So I do hope that, and by the way, as a lifelong sportsman, I fully understand the impact, the sporting impact, and I'm not saying these things lightly, but this is a critical moment. Finding a way to come to the agreement. It's not for me to recommend anything to you, but I've been trying to get this done for 12.5 years in total, and 70 meetings later, and I think we'd like to feel we can get to a finish. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have said at the beginning, for those who don't know, Mr. Woodham's chair of the Surface Water Management Plan Funding Committee, which has led the project really from the beginning to put the flood alleviation works in place around the town. So back to Councillor Cottingham, and then hopefully we can possibly put a proposal together.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
Thank you. It was just a procedural point which Councillor Jeffrey regarding Eastern Planning. So it's not a given, obviously, it then needs to go to Eastern Planning, but what Sport England will be doing would be withdrawing their, as you said, their statutory objection to the scheme. There's obviously other people who've put their own comments, or potentially their own objections to the scheme, but this takes away, if we come to an agreement with regarding the lease, the termination period, along with also the district valuer, should be sufficient within, as I said, a lease heads of terms document, which no doubt our solicitors, garden leader, are very familiar with, will be able to draft, I would assume, relatively quickly within the time frame, and when it then goes to Eastern Area Planning.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're obviously specifically asked, as has been said, to comment or to discuss the cricket club lease and not the wider scheme. I have personally no issue with 50 years at all. Notice periods, however, I do have slightly more fears about. 25-year notice period is effectively a 25-year lease with no break clause, which Councillor Jeffrey said about giving away, but not giving away, allowing others to use a council asset. That's effectively a 25-year lease. That's it. There's no break clause at all, effectively within that 50-year period with a 25-year lease. Therefore, I do have an issue with that, especially against the background of Hemingway and potentially what may flow down from the town centre to this neck of the woods. I would personally, therefore, be happier with, again, a long period. I totally accept Councillor Jeffrey's point that a 3-year notice period is no good to anybody, and certainly no good to the cricket club. I would personally be suggesting a 10-year rather than 25-year notice period, and I do say notice period, not break clause, because that then gives the cricket club 10 years effectively to find an alternative if an alternative was being to be found. I find it exceptionally doubtful that a town council would actually, any town council would actually say no, go away, we don't want cricket in Thatcham. I think that would be tantamount to insanity. With this particular aspect, and especially with the particular aspect of Hemingway, coming in. I would personally wish to see a 10-year notice period, but certainly have no problem at all with the 50-year lease, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Leader. But councillor.
Yeah, so as I said, I've spoken to Sport England today. What they've said is 15 years minimum regarding termination break clause. That's their bottom line.
Negotiation on the hoof. 25 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
If that's what Sports England are saying, I would be, personally happy with 15 years, provided that we have in the lease that the land is only used for the purposes of playing cricket.
Yeah.
Because that then covers us for anything happening to the cricket club and being assigned, lease being assigned, and all that potential, which I'm sure the solicitor would pick up because they're far better at these type of things than I am.
So just to clarify, I think we've also been talking as a council regarding events. So I don't think we should restrict ourselves to just cricket. I think we've talked about potentially having cinema evenings, other events. So I understand exactly where you're coming from, is that the primary purpose needs to be cricket, but we shouldn't exclude the cricket club or ourselves wanting to be able to hire the field for other events outside of cricket. So a good illustration was the King's Coronation event which we had, which strictly speaking would not comply with that term.
Yeah, councillor Cole.
Yeah, totally accept that, Mr. Mayor. I know it's negotiation. Totally accept that, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure our solicitors will come up with a form of words that will allow other events to take place whilst maintaining that cricket is by far and away the bulk of the activity that is to be operated within the field.
Thank you, councillor. And as we are pressed for time this evening, I do feel that we're getting very close to a proposal here. Councillor Pike.
Thank you. So I'm looking at the two proposals that were put on the agenda, on the document with the agenda, which is to extend the lease 50 years and that amend the notice period required. It doesn't specify here exactly the wording of that, and I think we have a principle of 15 years subject to continued use of the field for cricket and at its primary purpose. And with that slight addition, I would suggest that I would propose that we agree that, well, do you want to take them in part or separately or together? And then there's the third item, which is consequential to the first two.
Yeah, the third one is consequential, really, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, if you want to,
I suggest we propose that all three together, unless anyone wishes to amend that.
That would be fine with the council.
Can I amend the letter of intent to a lease heads of terms?
Okay.
It's like it's more technical and more specific rather than a letter of intent.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah. So right with you.
fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Happy with that amendment. So.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would second that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, am I allowed to vote or not? I'm probably not allowed to vote on it.
Probably best if you don't vote on it, but then I suppose everybody around this table's got some kind of interest one way or the other.
I don't have the same.
Mr. Mayor, not everybody around this table is the chairman.
That's very true. Yes, on that basis, councillor Cottingham, probably best if you withdraw. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. Could I have all in favour then, please? Thank you. Any against? Abstaining? Excellent. Thank you. That's carried. Did we include the third item in that?
Oh, yes, we did.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
As amended by councillor Cottingham and accepted by myself to change the word letter of intent to heads of terms.
Right. Okay. Can we just confirm at the end of the meeting? Okay, so
Acclamation by fanfare.
moving on to item 4, to consider the motion from councillor Jeffrey. Councillor Jeffrey, would you like to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll spare you my reading out the whole page because I think we do that. We probably dealt with the whole speech, etc., etc. Mr. Mayor, we had a disappointing situation where West Berkshire Council was obliged by the Secretary, by a Minister of State, to not proceed with requesting to review the proposals which have been put in by West Berkshire Council in April of this year as the West Berkshire Council submission of the local plan. It was a very sorry event because we have a bit of a repeat of history here. In the 1970s, the then Conservative Party in Newbury District Council shuffled nearly every piece of development that was going into Thatcham. There were a few additional facilities for the town then: schools, playing fields, play areas, halls, pretty much everything that a community needs when it's expanding was left to be planned for, funded, developed by our own councils and not even as a part of the original developers' obligations in many instances. If this particular plan is delivered in full, then 2,500 homes will be built in a truly unsustainable location, most of it running along the A4. A new town the size of Hungerford is to be placed, dumped onto Thatcham. This size, a town the size of Hungerford given to us, is being given but without any proper resourcing. It's not sustainable, it's not properly planned, it'll be a blight for the next generation. And for most of those of us who live in Thatcham and Bucklebury and Coldash and Mitcham, it is going to be a very sad situation that will take years to blend in. Inadequate resourcing for health and doctor services, a school that is too small to be viable in planning, in current planning terms. The motion refers to one site that would be sustainable, replacing the existing 1950s concrete Kennett School with a properly designed, properly built, integrated education campus for Thatcham's youngsters. That would be a real benefit for the town and for everybody that lives in Thatcham. But a new town without any real remediation, that, Mr. Mayor, is something which is going to be an appalling mischaracterisation and development of Thatcham. So this motion exists because it is the very clear view of the electorate that a splodge town wandering off to the east and actually entering Mitcham parish does not satisfy the people of Thatcham. It was a signal contributory factor to the Conservative Party losing every seat that it held in Thatcham on both West Berkshire Council and Thatcham Town Councils. The opponents of Splodge Town are utterly sincere, wholly serious, and demand respect from the inspector. This motion allows our council to properly oppose the egregious planning blight that is coming out of the existing local plan. And I do urge council to heartfeltly, if that's an English word, support this motion and on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. It is a word now on this council at least. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I first of all declare an interest, please? Motion point 4. I am chair of directors of what is now Equinox Learning Trust, formerly Kennett School Academies Trust, and therefore have an interest non-pecuniary in this. I would just like to add one thing to Councillor Jeffrey. He talks about a 600 pupil secondary school which is proposed for the site. The DFE, Department for Education, minimum that they consider to be a school to be viable is 1,200 for a secondary school. And therefore a 600 school would basically would not be built. The Kennet School itself, as we know, Councillor Jeffries has said, the building is old. The site has got a capacity of probably about 1,400 or 1,500, maybe 1,600 pupils to enable the school to provide the services that it should provide. Kennet has 1,890 pupils. And we'll probably have more next year because there is a bulge year coming from primary school into secondary school. So certainly the school that is proposed by the plan is just not possible, not viable.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Councillor Pike.
Thank you. So yes, I support this, and thanks Councillor Jeffries for incorporating some comments as I made during its drafting. Just like to comment particularly on point 2 about the representation of the examination. So the examination is a hearing conducted by the planning inspector, and unlike a planning inquiry, it is inquisitorial, that the inspector will ask questions. Therefore, it's not like cross-examine. You can't state your case, and therefore the opposition will have to be indirect through the comments that we make, and we'll come on to that in the next agenda item. And secondly, the representation that I have it, I am sort of anticipating that I will be attending on behalf of the council, but of course that is subject to the final dates that are agreed. I believe I'm available for the provisional dates, but one can never be certain, so we'll have to take that as it comes. And in respect of Councillor Cole's comments, that is an ambitious, Councillor Cole's comments on the school, that's an ambitious target for the inspector, but it is not impossible that the plan could still be withdrawn for other reasons, and that would give an opportunity for greater changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't say too much more because, to be fair, I think most of it's been said. But as members here tonight will know, I also sit on the district council, and this is something that really rankled, because it was a decision taken by the Secretary of State right at the very last minute, which prevented us, taking action that was appropriate for the district. But a couple of points on the climate, on the climate issue. Thatcham suffers from its geography in that it has a trunk road, the kind of running, well, it's not a trunk road, but you've got the main A road running through the middle of it, which carries a lot of traffic, including quite a lot of freight traffic, but no suitable north-south route. So everybody knows about the problems that are caused down at the train station with the railway, and people have got opinions on the railway crossing and whether or not there should be a bridge. Certainly something needs to happen, whether it's a bridge or an upgrade to the railway crossing itself, but this site is wholly inappropriate because it's going to dump a huge amount of housing in the wrong location when there isn't the existing capacity and road space for vehicles to move around now. These kind of complaints about pollution and road capacity are not limited to Thatcham either. A lot of the neighbouring parishes aren't happy with this. Bucklebury is obviously feeding into the ongoing examination and the inspector's review. But also a lot of drivers use the roads between here and both the M4 and the A34 as rat runs. So there's a lot of country lanes that run between here and those two roads. And obviously the development up at North East Thatcham is only going to make that worse. So I think it's worth making the point about the climate issue as well. There just isn't the capacity and the infrastructure at the moment to accommodate that large increase in housing.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or I think it's back to that's you, Councillor Jeffrey, to propose it. Or have you done so already?
I've just made a clarification on the method.
What are you proposing?
I'm just wondering whether we need to actually propose an amendment to take in what Councillor Pemberton's just said in terms of the climate.
Okay,
Is that gilding the lily?
Can I suggest that that will be addressed through the next agenda item, I think, which is actually how we respond to the inspector, which probably will address that point. If you said Councillor Templeton's happy.
In that case, I think in that case, I just leave it as, I do propose this motion as it stands, and would be grateful if everybody were able to support.
thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'd like to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Excellent. Don't see any dissension around the table. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Jeffrey, and for the other contributions.
I crave pardon, Mr. Mayor, I have to.
Oh, yes, you're fiddling on the roof.
I'm fiddling on the roof.
Good luck, Councillor Cole. So that takes us on to the item 5, following delegation at the last meeting to Planning and Highways. Councillor Pike was asked to prepare a response to the inspector's report, which was circulated today. Do you want to introduce that, Councillor?
Thank you. So actually, thank you, Mr. Mayor. But actually, the agenda item is a bit overstates. It was circulated on paper. There's a paper copy. What I expected from the last meeting was that I would provide an update to the document that you saw at the last meeting, which was fully populated, which we would note at this meeting. So what I'll be requesting at the end of my introduction is to note what I've circulated. So the inspector has, after asking a number of questions to West Berkshire Council, has issued the document which it calls IM 6, which asks a number of questions open to people, parties that responded to the Regulation 19 consultation, which of course Thatcham Town Council did quite length. And so this table takes the questions that are relevant to Thatcham Town Council and proposes the basis of the response, which will be further developed and agreed as agreed by the last full council meeting to be agreed by Planning and Highways under delegated responsibility. The purpose of this document is to keep the full council informed and so that you can make introduction comments to myself or come to the Planning and Highways meeting to make them directly. So I won't go through it in some detail, but as I said in my comments on the motion, that the way to address concerns is through the comments to the inspectorate, rather than you can't just say I object to it. You say these are the reasons that we find it deficient, and this document basically summarises at length the many reasons why we find it. Well, I suggest that we will find it deficient. You will note that the inspector has asked 23 questions specifically about North East Thatcham, probably about 20% of the total on the whole of the local plan. And my understanding, reading of that, is that he already has concerns about the proposal as it stands. In particular, he is asking a number of questions about whether 1,500 houses is the real number. So with that, I will just say that my intention is that this document be noted and carried and for further development in Planning and Highways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pike. Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, I've got a specific question. I didn't know whether to raise it before the motion that Councillor Jeffrey's
Please go ahead.
or now, because we heard the chap who just left that this alleviation pond here is partly because no suds or suds, isn't it, was done for the Whitelands estate. Now they're proposing to put a massive dump of concrete on those green fields, and that's all going to run off down into the industrial estate. Is there anything about flood alleviation and runoff in these questions?
Okay, so
consultation.
I will attempt to answer that. So one change in planning law is that there is now a very firm requirement for any development to have full sustainable drainage.
Right.
Therefore, I believe that the planning inspector will regard that as a matter for the planning application rather than for the local plan, because the national policies will require any subsequent planning application to address that point, and it would be dealt with at that time. There are policies in there that support that, but I don't think that will be a major a major issue for the planning inspector because the national policies will address that in any case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pemberton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know that there's a huge amount to say on this item, if we are to be noting,
Yeah.
other than again, just to thank Councillor Pike. I mean, looking at this document, I hadn't seen it until I walked. And there's already been a huge amount of additions since we last discussed it at council, which I expect no less because I'm mindful that there's a deadline coming up fairly soon. So in terms of noting, I think we should. Thank you again to Councillor Pike. There's no way that we'd be in this situation now were it not for this.
Thank you. Yes, I echo my thanks to Councillor Pike. We see so many documents come before this council which have involved a huge amount of work going on in the background, and we do appreciate that very much. Yes,
Just to say the final, that perhaps the contents of this table is a bit of an aspiration, that some of these items are more important and will have more influence on the inspector than others. And in the development I'll do further, I will focus on the ones that I think are most important. So if you find that I haven't completed the task, it's because I haven't got to the ones that I think will be less influential. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Sorry, I'm asking so many questions.
Okay.
Because I wasn't on the council before.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to be addressed somewhere. We haven't got a sewage plant able to deal with one more house, let alone. I take it, might that be in the planning act stages?
That's another complicated question. So there is an expectation in planning law that the statutory undertaker does provide the capacity for the site. However, they are able to insist, as they do on smaller applications, that there is a condition on the scheduling of the completion of the works, or probably the occupation of the properties, that doesn't exceed the supply. So it's, again, it's not a matter for the local plan, it's a matter for the individual planning applications that follow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments on the
I'm just going to formally propose that this document is noted for this meeting, and it won't be the last time that we come to see it.
Thank you, and we have a second. Are all those in favour, please? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving me something to do for the next one.
I knew you were under offer. So with that, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, 5 minutes or so until events. Thank you. Can we just confirm that John's got the right word?